Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to my channel. It's Brittany here with another video to help you guys live a happy, healthy, awesome life in a wheelchair. And today I'm going to take you guys to school, or back to school, to learn what happens to your bladder when you're paralyzed. You might have heard the term neurogenic bladder, which is something I'm sure that all of the doctors said to us when we were first paralyzed, that now we have a neurogenic bladder. But what the hell does that even mean? I didn't know, and for many years I had zero idea what it meant until I got curious about it and started educating myself about what a neurogenic bladder was, what a neurogenic bowel was, and actually how I could influence those things in order to get better outcomes, to educate myself about the medication that I was on, all of those different things. So today I'm going to teach you guys all the things that I know about what a neurogenic bladder is, what happens to your bladder when you're paralyzed, and how you can manage a neurogenic bladder. The beginning of this video, I'm going to talk about what a neurogenic bladder is and explain how basically the body manages your peeing. And then what happens when you get paralyzed to those reflexes. And then I'm going to talk about what an upper motor neuron neurogenic bladder is versus a lower motor neuron neurogenic bladder and the differences between those. And then I'm going to talk about how to manage a neurogenic bladder, medications, different things like that that you can use in order to have less incontinence and just have a more successful life with a neurogenic bladder, living with a neurogenic bladder. Okay, so let's get to it. Starting off, what does your body do to control how you pee? So in order to understand what happens to your body when you're paralyzed, you kind of have to understand what happens to your body before you're paralyzed, right? There's basically four main things in your central nervous system that control how your body either voids or doesn't void. And they're controlled by basic reflexes in the bottom of your spinal cord, so in your sacral region of your spinal cord, and then a little higher up, T11 to L1, which is considered the thoracolumbar region of your spinal cord. And then there's an area in your brainstem called, for short, pons, but it's actually called the pontine micturition, because that's what urination is, micturition center. And it's kind of like the command center of when to go pee and when not to go pee. And then you have your cerebral cortex, which is like the thinking part of your brain where you're like, oh, I know, and I have the realization that I have to go pee. So there's four centers. The bottom one at your sacral level, a little higher up. Then you have the pons, or the pontine micturition center, and then the cerebral cortex with your conscious realization that you have to go to the bathroom. And they all work together to basically allow you to go pee at appropriate times, or when you want to, and not go pee when you don't want to. That very bottom part of your spinal cord, that sacral section, it's responsible for contracting your bladder, and it's also responsible for your external urethral sphincter, that one that's right at the outside of your body, and not the one that's at the very top of your bladder. That's a different one. The section that's higher up, the thoracolumbar region of your spinal cord, that's responsible for relaxing your bladder when you don't want to go pee. And it's also responsible for relaxing that internal urethral sphincter that's right at the base of your bladder. The two lower levels of your spinal cord, the sacral section and the thoracolumbar section, they work together to basically coordinate the contracting of your bladder and the relaxing of those sphincters in order for you to void if you want to, based on what that higher level region, the pontine micturition center, is basically telling it to do. In a normal person without damage to their central nervous system, when they're really little, like babies, those bottom reflexes will just work together to void, not when it's appropriate, just when the bladder is full. And the stretch receptors on the outside of the bladder, they get activated when the bladder is not very full, right around 200 milliliters. Those stretch receptors start to send information to those reflexes in your spinal cord, in your lower spinal cord, that you have to go to the bathroom. So when you're like a baby, that's when you will actually void. Unless you use those higher centers in your brainstem and your cerebral cortex to say like, no, I don't want to go pee. Then it will send feedback loops down to the thoracolumbar section that's responsible for relaxing your bladder, and it will just keep it relaxed until you actually want to go to the bathroom, unless you wait way too long and then it will override and you will go to the bathroom. But when you have a spinal cord injury, what happens is you lose the command center. So the bottom parts of your spinal cord that are responsible for voiding when you're little, those ones are basically left to coordinate on their own, and they don't do a very good job of coordinating on their own without those higher level centers that would normally be controlling when to go to the bathroom. There's two types of neurogenic bladder based on where you get paralyzed. If you are paralyzed higher than the sacral section, so most people have upper motor neuron neurogenic bladders because they're paralyzed higher than the sacral section, then those two bottom levels of your spinal cord, they still try to coordinate your voiding, but they don't do a very good job. So the stretch receptors, because you don't have control over the command center anymore, the stretch receptors are activated at really low volumes when you have an upper motor neuron neurogenic bladder. And so it will send information to your spinal cord, that lower level section, saying, hey, I need to go to the bathroom. And those two sections will try and coordinate to void, but the sphincter doesn't relax very well in coordination with when your bladder flexes. And so sometimes your bladder will flex, but your sphincter will tighten, and that creates high bladder pressure inside your bladder, which can then lead to kidney damage. And sometimes when your bladder flexes, the sphincter does open and then you'll get incontinence. Generally in an upper motor neuron neurogenic bladder, when the bladder contracts and the sphincter tightens, it depends on the pressure differential between those two, whether you'll be incontinent or not. So if the pressure in the bladder is higher than the pressure in the sphincter, you'll leak. And if the pressure in your sphincter is higher than the bladder, then you'll have high bladder pressure and you have a risk of the urine going up into your kidneys. So that is what happens in an upper motor neuron neurogenic bladder, which is what most people with spinal cord injuries have, because most people are injured somewhere, from the C level in your neck, the C level vertebrae to the bottom of the thoracic level. There's less people that are injured really down low. But if you are injured lower in the sacral section, so in that the tailbone region, then instead of just losing the command center, you're actually damaging the area of your spinal cord that normally contracts your bladder muscle. So when that's damaged, your bladder muscle doesn't contract at all generally. Unless you have a mixed type bladder, which we'll talk about in a second. But in general, if you have a lower motor neuron neurogenic bladder, it's considered a flaccid bladder because you've ruined the nerves or damaged the nerves that actually contract the bladder. So that's good in some ways because then it doesn't create high bladder pressure because it's not contracting, and there's generally lower risk of you getting urine going back up to your kidneys and damaging your kidneys. But you can get what's called overflow incontinence. So it's like a balloon. It only can stretch so much, and if it stretches to its capacity, then it will leak out of your urethral sphincter. So those are generally the two types of neurogenic bladder. I was always curious why when you were paralyzed, your bladder flexes more. And after doing research, it makes so much sense because your bladder naturally flexes at a low volume to let you know, hey, there's pee in here, you're gonna have to deal with this soon. But if you can't override that with higher brain level thinking from your central nervous system, then it just, automatically voids. So that makes a whole lot more sense to me. Sometimes there is mixed type neurogenic bladder, in which case the bladder doesn't contract at all and the sphincter stays really tight. So the bladder contracts and the sphincter is overactive, in which case your bladder has a really high volume, but you don't leak, and there's low pressure in your bladder, so there's very little chance of kidney damage. And then in another type of mixed type neurogenic bladder, mixed type B, that's where your bladder is spastic still, but your sphincter is flaccid. So in that case, you will have lots of problems with incontinence because your bladder volume is generally low, and you can't hold the urine in. So it's almost better to have an upper motor neuron neurogenic bladder where both are spastic, or that mixed type A where the sphincter is spastic but the bladder is flaccid. There's definitely variation in how people present with these types of neurogenic bladder, but those are the general types. So 4 areas of the brain control peeing. When you have upper motor neuron neurogenic bladder, the 2 bottom areas of your bladder that are sort of like the childlike reflexes of your bladder, those are sort of intact and they try and coordinate together and they don't do a very good job of it. So sometimes you get urge incontinence where you leak because the sphincter and the bladder don't contract and relax at the same time. And there's high pressure because sometimes the bladder flexes but the sphincter doesn't relax, and there's risk of kidney damage. So it's upper motor neuron, and then lower motor neuron is generally the flaccid type where there's damage to the nerves that actually control the contraction of the bladder. And in that case, you can sort of get mixed types where sometimes the bladder is spastic but the sphincter is flaccid, and sometimes you can get where the bladder is spastic and the sphincter is flaccid. So those are the 2 types of neurogenic bladder, and it just helped me so much to understand why my bladder did what it did, because then you know what you can do to control the neurogenic bladder, which is what we're going to talk about now. So how do people living with neurogenic bladder, people like us, people with spinal cord injuries, how do you control your neurogenic bladder? The first thing you have to do is find a way to void where it's predictable and something that you can control. So especially with an upper motor neuron neurogenic bladder, you want to control those bladder pressures. You don't want your bladder to fill up so much that it's going to cause that squeezing and send extra urine back up to your kidneys, which can cause damage. So you have to be managing when you're going to the bathroom, and because we can no longer control voluntary voiding, we have to use a catheter. And then if you have that lower motor neuron neurogenic bladder, most of the time, because the bladder doesn't flex at all, they have a hard time getting the pee out. There's no pressure to push the pee out. So that's why they have to use a catheter. They can't initiate that voiding because there's no pressure to initiate the voiding. So a catheter is generally what most people have to use. Sometimes if you have an upper motor neuron neurogenic bladder, you can use pressure by pushing on your abdomen to initiate voiding. I can't remember what that's called. I'll put it on the bottom of the screen. There's a technique for it, but some people can void that way. I have a friend that can do it that way, and she has an upper motor neuron neurogenic bladder, which is spastic, but she can control the voiding just by using pressure. But most of us have to use a catheter. So the catheters that I use are these SpeedyCath standard hydrophilic catheters. It's important when you are thinking about what type of catheter to use with a neurogenic bladder. You want to choose one that is good quality, that's going to maintain a healthy bladder. Hydrophilic are kind of the gold standard now, and I love this one from Coloplast because it has like this little thing on the back that you can take off and stick it to wherever you want. I don't know if you can see that, but it sticks to things so that if you're cathing, you can stick it to, you know, the bathroom wall or whatever. It also has a little hook that you can use. It doesn't need lube at all, which avoids you cross-contaminating when you're like trying to put the catheter in lube. So it just reduces the chances of urinary tract infections. If you can't use or you don't have funding for hydrophilic catheters, the regular catheters are good too. These ones are just sort of the gold standard. So that's what I use. And right now, if you are interested in the types of different catheters that you can get if you're a female or a male, Coloplast has this cool, basically a sample box that will show you all of the different kinds of things that they carry in their female and their male lines. It comes with one of each type of catheter that they have in each of those lines for male and female. And then it comes with just a bunch of information that you can read up on. It has all of these little booklets on getting reimbursement for your catheters, what the catheters are, all that kind of stuff. It has just the different types of catheters. So if you guys are interested in that and want to see sort of your options for catheters, if you've been using the same catheter for a while and you want to try something else, I'll put a link in the description below to where you can go get that sample box. Also in the sample box is this cool little thing that Coloplast came up with, which I haven't found a use for it yet, but it's cool. I think it's supposed to be for people that have, you know, a sweater or something on and they're trying to go to the bathroom and they can't really see what they're doing. It like holds your sweater up out of the way so that you can see what you're doing. Well, that didn't work. Yeah, it's supposed to be able to hold your shirt, I think. So it's a cute little thing. That they came up with to help with that. And then they also have this other thing that is awesome that you can suction in a bathroom stall and then hang your catheter stuff on it. So that's the other cool thing that comes in the kit. So yeah, if you're interested in that, you just look in the description below and go check out that for your catheter options. So that's the first thing that really you need to know about managing a neurogenic bladder is you generally have to use a catheter so that you can void at predictable times and to avoid that bladder pressure issue in your bladder. The second thing that most people end up doing for managing a neurogenic bladder is some sort of medication. The medication allows your bladder to not be as spastic if you have that upper motor neuron neurogenic bladder, because we have that urge incontinence where our bladder is spasming at low volumes because it doesn't have that override from our brain to say, no, it's not the proper time to void. And so it's constantly spasming at those low volume stretches. And so taking medication to stop that is one way that people increase the amount of volume that they have in their bladder. The most popular type of medication for neurogenic bladder is anticholinergics, and that's because the neurotransmitters that contract the bladder are acetylcholine, and so the anticholinergics are intercepting that neurotransmitter that is affecting the bladder and making it contract. So anticholinergics are probably the number one thing that doctors try for neurogenic bladder. There's other ones. I was reading about antidepressants and all these other things and different kinds of medications that are used, but I would say just from talking to my friends and my urologist, the anticholinergic medications are the most popular. The medication that I take is Toviaz. I've tried lots of different other medications. I was on oxybutynin to begin with right out of the hospital, and I was on it for years and years and years, but I wanted to try something different because I just had such bad dry mouth, and it was actually my dentist that brought it up to me that my gums weren't healthy because I didn't have enough saliva in my mouth. And so I was like, oh, that's really scary. And so she asked me to talk to my doctor to see if there was some other medication that I could take to stop the dry mouth so that I could have better saliva production in my mouth and then improve the health of my gums. So it was that prompted me to go looking for other medications. And I tried a couple of different other ones. I tried tolterodine. I can't remember the other one I tried. I was on myrbetriq for a while in combination with Toviaz, but it just didn't seem to do anything, so I just stopped taking the myrbetriq. But I did find that I got worse constipation with some of the other ones that I tried, Toviaz, the one I'm on now, it doesn't seem to cause any, or at least a not very bad dry mouth, and I don't get constipated or anything on it. So that's the one I like. You guys can check out other ones and talk to your urologist or your family doctor about which ones might work for you, but that's the one that I like the most over the years that I've tried, so that's what I take. The other thing that some people try to manage their neurogenic bladder is bladder augmentation. So this is where you get basically a piece of your intestine, and you have a surgery to enlarge your bladder so that the bladder volume and those stretch receptors aren't activated as frequently so that your bladder can hold more. So that is one that I know some people have had. If you get the Mitrofanoff surgery, which is a type of surgery that you can get where you cath out of either your belly button or anywhere in your abdomen. Basically, they reroute your urethra and so that you can cath where you can actually see. That one, they generally do the bladder augmentation too, so you can hold more and cath at a more, functional level for you. So that is one of the ways that people manage their neurogenic bladder. Another way that you can manage your neurogenic bladder is through Botox. I've had many friends try Botox, and so many of them have loved it. So it is a very individual decision whether to try Botox. It's the botulism toxin, which actually paralyzes your muscle a little bit, reduces the ability of it to spasm, and it generally works really well, according to the friends that I've known that have had that procedure done. I have had one friend though that had a pretty severe reaction to it. It's called global toxicity, I think. But it's where the botulism toxin goes outside of that local area and it goes globally into your body. So it does the same thing that it would be doing in your bladder to the other muscles and tissue in your body. So my friend wasn't able to move very well. She couldn't transfer. She was super tired. It basically just like on a micro level paralyzes some of your tissues. And so it was a really hard thing to come back from for her. It took about 9 months and she still didn't get full function back of some of her muscles. So I don't want to scare any of you about what might happen with Botox. I just want to kind of give you some of the things that my friends have said. The majority of them, overwhelming majority of my friends that have had Botox have loved it and it's been life-changing for them. So I think that the global toxicity risk is low, but I just wanted to mention it while I was on the topic of Botox, just so that you guys could at least do your own research and figure out what might be right for you and weigh the benefits with the risks. Okay, so the last thing for managing a neurogenic bladder is bladder training. And your bladder at the end of the day is just a muscle. And muscles can be trained one way or the other. If you pee all the time when your bladder is, at 150 milliliters or 200 milliliters, your bladder stretch receptors are going to get used to stretching and being sort of activated at that volume. So if you slowly up the amount of liquid that you're drinking and you slowly sort of increase the time between catheterization, then sometimes you can train your bladder to hold higher volumes. My friend Margaret had really good success with this, just drinking very slowly, upping her volumes really slowly, and the time in between her caths slowly, and she's able to hold, like 600 milliliters now, where she was able to only hold like 300 before. I prefer to go to the bathroom more often because I heard from a urologist once when I was randomly in a waiting room that if you go to the bathroom or if you catheterize between like every 2 and 3 hours, that the bacteria can't multiply in that time. So then you have less chance of urinary tract infection. I have no idea what there's any validity to that. So don't go trying it and saying that, it didn't work for you. That was what one guy told me and it seems to work for me. I like peeing more often, but you definitely have to weigh that, factor with your own lifestyle. So it's up to you guys. I'm just telling you what I do. And that bladder training has worked really well for a couple of friends of mine, and I just don't really choose to go down that route because I drink a lot and I tend to pee every 2 to 3 hours anyway, so holding large volumes isn't that important to me. But for some people who can't catheterize as easily, they don't have as high of hand dexterity, maybe they're quadriplegic, that doesn't have help as much, you guys may have to cath less often, and that might be an option for you to manage your neurogenic bladder. So those are all the ways that basically a neurogenic bladder is managed. I hope this video is helpful to you guys. I know that I've always been curious about what happens when you're paralyzed to your bladder, and I know that doctors have never ever told me. They always just give me basically the Cliff's Notes about what's going on with my body, but never assume I'm smart enough to actually understand anything, which is super irritating. So if you guys were curious about that, I helped you understand. That's all I got for you guys today. I will catch you guys on another video again next week. Bye guys.